Hey everybody, welcome back to Blacktop Banter. This is episode 30, so we're moving along. This is season 2. My guest today is Mike Nawa. And Mike, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? You were actually introduced to me through a mutual friend, Brian Hess, who said, hey, maybe you should get this guy on there. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, let us know your name, where you're from, and what kind of a tie you have to the asphalt industry.
Well, Mike Nawa. I'm from Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, just south of Harrisburg. I've been sweeping parking lots for the last 44 years. And I've been involved in many aspects of asphalt, seal coating. I've been on the periphery of all of the things you do. Swept for a lot of seal coaters, painted lines for a lot of seal coaters after they were done. But sweeping was the thing that made my business what it was.
So how did you get into because I know people that have done the same thing, like they start doing everything and then they pick one thing and they really expand on it. How did you pick sweeping?
I fell into it by accident. My first company was a landscape company, and we used a sweeping subcontractor to do various and sundry spring cleanups and fall cleanups and help out with things. Mm-hmm. And he had a heart attack. I called him one spring for spring cleanup. He said, I'm not doing it anymore. I had a heart attack in the truck and, just laid there until the cops went by. I wanted to know why the truck wasn't moving. And
oh, wow.
So I said, what are you doing with the truck? He said, I'm selling it. So it was my first truck, my first line striper, and, things like that. And moved from landscaping to hard surface in 1976. And never looked back. The bigger that the hard surface got, the smaller the landscaping got. Eventually sold off the landscaping to the employees and concentrated on sweeping. And it was a great line of work because, as I tell everybody, as I try to tell people now, especially parking lot sweepers, parking lot sweeping is not a profitable enterprise by itself. But you're the guy who's at the shopping center more often than anybody else.
Sure.
So if you're there 3, 4, 5 days a week, 2 days a week, you're still there way more than the owner, way more than the property manager. So you're in a position to see the lights that are out, the stop signs have been knocked over, the pothole is formed. And if you're in a position to fix that stuff, to take care of those things, then the property manager utilizes you for more and more things. And that's what our business became. We moved out of sweeping only in 2000 when my first company, Industrial Grounds Maintenance, sold that. My dad and I left that company and started custom maintenance services with my wife, Judy. And, he wanted to be sweeping only and I wanted to be shopping center maintenance. And the change came, I was at the NPE and Harold Green had a seminar on diversifying your services to your existing customers. Instead of going finding new customers, find new things to do for your existing customers. Mm-hmm. It made a great deal of sense to me. And that seminar changed my life. And actually, that's been a long time. Prior to 2000 was that seminar. And I checked this year, and Harold Green is still at Chamberlain Contractors. So he's had some longevity as well.
I think that must be quite a testament for MPE for somebody to say one seminar changed my life at MPE.
I know more people than I don't who feel that way about certain aspects of NPE.
Sure.
There are people who credit NPE and the people they've met there, not just the seminar, but the people they've met there, sure, with changing their entire business. Part of it is realizing you're not alone. Mm-hmm. This business is very insular. When we're in geographic area, like you're in a geographic area, yep, you know who your competitors are, and generally they're competitors, not friends.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah,
you can't call them and say, hey, do you have an extra diaphragm for my pump? I'm on a job and I'm broke down. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But without the first introduction, you can't.
Right.
You won't. MPE has always provided that neutral ground, except for the people who live in the town that the show is in, yeah, where we can talk amongst ourselves, contractors from Arizona and Connecticut and Wisconsin and, southern Georgia can all talk about the same problems you have with each other that you share.
Yeah.
And, you can find ways to remediate those problems that you never thought possible.
Yeah, I think that was kind of my first thing when I first went to MPE. I was looking to figure out how the heck I do more, and that was one of the very first things I found were a few friends. First of all, the equipment floor and just a few classes really was overwhelming for me and made me think,
Yep.
oh my goodness.
Yep.
And then when I left there, I had that high for a little bit, and then it started to fade. And that's why I started doing the social media groups and doing all the social media stuff, was to try to keep that camaraderie together. Not only that, it became a valuable resource for me because I've made friends with contractors that I didn't have any competition to worry about, that wanted to be friends. Like you said, it was very insular. And when you become friends with somebody and you have knowledge to share, that makes it a lot less insular, and you enjoy your business. You start getting more, I guess, I don't know how to say it, I guess gratification out of what you're doing. And,
Indeed.
and I think that's what MPE, even now today, is the highlight of my year. And no matter what I'm doing, MPE is the highlight of my year. And there's people I don't see for a year, and I see them there, and we didn't miss a beat, and I love it. So
I agree. I went to the second NPE, and from then on, so that puts it at about 30 years I've been going to the show.
Yeah.
I spent 27 years on the board of the show.
Wow.
They credited me last year as one of the founders of the educational seminars.
Very cool.
And I'm not sure that they're wrong, but I can't take credit. I know I wasn't alone, no matter what happened.
Sure.
But the second show, there were no seminars. And in talking to Bob Woltering, the late Robert Woltering, who started the show, about what I felt the need for education at the show was, he literally just said, okay, you're in charge. And then he would send me ideas for, what about this? What about that? What about this? And he sent me to see Brad Humphreys and Jeff Stokes at one of their seminars. And they had contacted him, or he had contacted them. I'm not sure where that came out. I said, their seminar was great. It had absolutely nothing to do with what I do, and yet it was well presented and spectacular. And they formed the core of the entire educational program for years. They and the people they knew and people they brought in, and how that network expanded is the network of educators at the show expanded is exactly how the network of people like yourself who know each other expands as well.
Mm-hmm.
There were some great shows and great locations and great seminars, and I can't say I've ever disappointed in any of them, in a single one.
Yeah.
Well, Charlotte wasn't great, but
well, the very first time I spoke was at Cleveland, and it snowed, and that was the off year, kind of when things transitioned to emerald and rust.
Yep.
And we made the best of that. I think the floor was fine, the classes were fine. We made it through, and we logged a year under our belt. But actually, when you left the hall and you were meeting with your friends outside at one of the very few pubs and stuff where there was, I made some lifelong bonding friends at that NPE, just because that's all there was to do. And it was like, well, we're going to make the best of it. And we had the very first social media get together there. And I'm excited for this NPE. Hopefully it goes the way we all hope that it goes, because we're going to have another get together and things like that. But just to see, I've only been around NPE now for 5 years, and to hear the stories of things the way it was before, and at Charlotte, and when there was outdoor demos one time and things like that. I get excited and nostalgic about something that I've never even witnessed or seen, but to hear people talk about it gets me excited for the future, because I couldn't imagine me, myself, making a suggestion and Russ Turner looking at me and saying, okay, you're in charge of that then. Go ahead. I would have heart palpitations, because it's just the size of it now. My little intricate part, I like it. I couldn't imagine taking on very much more, but it's fun.
Well, and I had been in business a couple of years by then. I mean, if we're figuring it was 1990, probably 14 years. But I felt alone. That sweeping was not as well known as it is today.
Yeah.
I remember my first bank turn down for sweeping for a truck.
Yep.
Because the banker actually said, I don't know why people would pay you to do that. And okay.
Yeah. What was your first sweeper truck?
1976 Schwartz Mini American, round tank, didn't dump, had Dutch doors in the back, and the winch to lift and raise and lower the head was a hand crank winch.
Oh my goodness!
So,
now,
like a car hauler. You crank it up, and you drive to your next stop. You flip the lever, you crank it down.
it's always been an interesting business to me, because around here we have a few industrial parks and like Walmart and things. So there's not a lot, and there's not a huge market for it. So where I'm at, there's not street sweeping companies. Most of the industrial park or industrial places have their own sweepers that they use in-house. But when I get to MPE and I see those huge Elgin ones, and I see guys that do take on a lot of sweeping and things, it reminds me a lot of when I went and did some striping with the guys from Marathon in Houston, and they're like, we got to do it at night. We only have 8 or 9 hours at night to do this bad boy. That's most of the time I see sweeping is being done at night most of the time. So how did you guys have that same adaptation, or did you guys go whenever you could? Mike, how did you do it when it came to sweeping?
We were what the industry calls paper chasers. We were out picking up litter at shopping centers. Shopping centers have been my only customers. At Custom Maintenance, they were my only customer. At Industrial Grounds Maintenance, we would sweep anything. Industrial parks, highways, bridges,
whatever,
the Schuylkill Expressway, whatever contract was available, we would look into. But I felt then, and I feel now, I feel fairly secure in that I was right. Not that they were wrong, but that I was right. That shop at retail is one of those things that if you build it, you've got a loan to build it, and the people who gave you the loan are going to make you maintain it.
Yeah. They're
not going to let their equity go, down the drain.
Sure.
So when it comes to sweeping and shopping center maintenance, it's everything from nightly sweeping, emptying the trash cans, to painting bollards, to putting up a new stop sign, to filling up a pothole with coal patch until the real paver shows up to fix the problem. Because we were not a paver, we were just sort of the, in case of emergency, break glass guys.
Yeah.
The first responders. We knew what was going on, and if the parking lot lights are supposed to be on and they're not on, or if a car goes through a storefront, if the little old lady or gentleman hits the gas instead of the brake, which has happened numerous times. Yeah. We get called to clean it up, and while we're there, we board it up, and it's just it's happened. The stories would take days and days for me to even remember all of the weird things that have happened during sweeping.
I want to ask you a question about before I lose it. So as far as your client base being mainly shopping centers,
yep.
How did you go about marketing yourself or sales to get the shopping center to even give you the time of day or the attention, especially if they already had a contractor?
Yep, always a difficult thing. The task was to set yourself apart from your competitors. We were doing this from the very beginning. We did this full time. So many people that I know in sweeping, either starting or maybe even still, it's the 1 or 2 person operation. So the property manager's at work, it's 10:30, gets a complaint from a store that the trash can wasn't empty last night. He calls the sweeping contractor and he gets voicemail because the guy's asleep. I had one competitor who was a postal employee and swept a couple of nights a week. It wasn't a real big thing for him. It was truly, what he said to me was, it made the payments on his Corvette. Huh. Nice guy, but that's not the competition.
Yeah.
A property manager wants somebody dedicated to your craft like they're dedicated to theirs.
Sure.
They have a full-time job managing this property. They would prefer not to deal with part-time contractors if they can help it.
Sure.
Sometimes that's what you get, but in my experience, if the more professional you are, mm-hmm. the more respect the property manager will give you. Mm-hmm. And that also comes down to how you contact the property manager.
Yeah.
We were big time in email, not big time in real mail,
Mhm.
not email. But again, let's remember, this is like 1990, 1995, 2000,
Sure.
we did a lot of work in person. I
Mhm.
have a customer, since custom maintenance was sold in 2000, when I say I had a customer, I've had a customer, but they're still with the company that I sold. They were located in Georgia, and I had never met them. They had, all the work was done over the phone, and they paid their bills. And one day I was thinking of something to do, so I drove to their office in Georgia and made a call from the lobby and said, I'm downstairs. I'd like to just say hello. And I was in Georgia, and I went to Florida because their timber development was in Florida. And I said, what's a couple extra hours? I'm this far.
Yeah.
But I was one of the few people who would go to my customers' offices.
Right.
I've been to Long Island to visit with Cedar and Vasgood, and
How do you
you
manage
know,
all that, Mike? How did you manage all the way from Georgia to New York to everywhere? How did you, for as far as um, you know, m- the maintenance aspect of it? How many people and how did you? I'm having trouble
well,
wrapping my
remember
brain
the
around it.
customer's office was in Georgia, not their location.
Oh, okay.
Their shopping center was
So how
right
big?
here in Central PA.
Okay, so did you do everything in Central PA for the most
Yeah,
part?
we
Okay.
did our service area north to south was close to 300 miles.
Okay. Still good.
And
Still pretty
in
good.
that yep, in that 300 miles, we've had 5 offices,
Okay.
one in northern PA, 2 in central PA, one in West Virginia, and one in northern Virginia. That
Wow.
should be 5. Charlottesville, Waynesboro, and we employ people in those locations. We park trucks there, and we did that. We were able to do that because the Charlottesville, Waynesboro office came about because the guy we were doing a shopping center for in Harrisburg was building 2 shopping centers, one in Waynesboro and one in Stanton, Virginia. He said, "Can you take care of them?" I said, "Well, yeah, that's 2 shopping centers. That's as big of a start as I've ever been given."
Sure.
And we were the landscaper, the sweeper, and the snow plower, and we had a full-time guy with a truck and a plow, and we had a subcontractor behind us if it got really bad. But it doesn't snow that much in the middle of Virginia.
Sure.
And the guy that we worked for us, he cut the grass and swept the parking lots. And at one time we had 2 or 3 employees there, and we got a few more shopping centers. We grow a little bit. And it was that's how we would grow. So we were customer centered, not geographically centered. Um,
So as far as I know you said sweeping alone isn't going to do everything. Why? Is there some companies that try to just do sweeping and that make it, or is there, if you want to say smaller, you offer more services? I mean, because
I, I I
when I
honestly
see those
don't.
Elgins, I see, some of those new Elgins, I just think of the price tag on some of those bad boys, and I think, my goodness, how long is it going to take to pay one of these suckers off?
Well, and that the Elgin is an actual street sweeper.
Mhm.
We didn't do street sweeping.
Mhm.
That's for much different contractors than myself. But now go look at a small parking lot truck
Mhm.
at the Victory booth or at the Schwartz booth. They're still
Yeah.
130 grand.
Yeah, that's what I was
How,
gonna say. The Schwartzes,
how
I
do
I asked him last year, and he said well over 6 figures, and I was just like, man, there's
yeah.
no way we could justify any of that. But I see a lot of people do use them, and I wonder about that. What kind of margins are? Obviously, it's just the machine, but and
Well,
the
but it's a machine that self-destructs sitting in the yard.
Mhm.
Um, it's a machine that is constantly turning left. You don't make. I always told my guys, you don't turn right in a sweeper because you're turning into your blind spot.
Sure.
So you always turn out the window you can see. Always making left-hand turns. So you're
You
scrubbing the front tires off.
go like this until you're in the middle, or what?
Nope. We go back and forth. You start along the curb. You go out along the perimeter. You come. You're at night in the headlights. You'll see the trash.
Yeah.
It's not like cutting the grass. There's no pattern to it. You got to just get the trash where it is. And
Oh, okay.
with the light bar and with the headlights and sometimes the parking lot lights are on, sometimes they're not, and sometimes it makes the difference whether they are or they aren't. Some trash is, a soda bottle, a aluminum can is
Yeah.
reflective when the lights aren't on and the lights of the truck hit it. Uh,
How often was one shopping center? How often did you service it?
Most of our shopping centers were 5 and 7 days a week.
Wow.
There were a few that were, 3 and 4. There were occasionally a 1 a week.
Yeah.
But at the time, so let's go back. Let's do like 2000. Let's do before the crash of 2008. So let's go to 2005, 2006.
All right.
Target was still top of the market, still very brand conscious. They were 7 days a week, and occasionally a day porter would go in 1 or 2 or 3 days to hand pick the grass along the back and clean out the dock areas and things like that. Home Depot and Lowe's, they were 5 days a week, because contractors are
dirty.
Not the cleanest group of people.
Y'all say it. I'll say dirty. I don't care.
They'll buy 6 bags of concrete. One will break when they're putting it in the truck. It'll just lay on the parking lot. It was what, $3? They're not going to pick it up. So there was a lot to do at a Lowe's and a Home Depot.
So what about what I want to ask you? I changed subjects very quick, Mike, because
that's all right.
I don't want to lose track of what I'm thinking about. How I know you said you used snail mail before, and I've noticed, especially when it comes to sales, some of the tactics might change, but the general concept of how to win some clients stays the same. How did you get your foot in the door? Because if I went to a shopping center right now and said, "Hey, I want to do the maintenance right here," where do you start?
Well, I always started with the property manager, and I always made a point of, I'm a very retail facility oriented guy.
Sure.
I was in a town that I did not service at the time, and I actually never did service. I was driving past the shopping center, and I noticed that the base of the pylon sign, somebody had sprayed graffiti on it.
Sure.
So I looped around, pulled in, took a picture of it, called the leasing number, asked for the property manager. They asked what it was about. I said, well, I got some pictures of graffiti on the pylon sign at whatever shopping center I was at, and I just wanted to pass it on to him.
Yeah.
And I got the guy on the phone and said, listen, my name's Mike Nawa, and customer maintenance services. I don't service this area, but I was in your area and noticed that somebody had graffitied your pylon base. Can I send you these photos? He said, sure. And I sent the photos, and that was Phillips Edison. And it took probably until 2012 before we got our first shopping center with Phillips Edison.
Oh, really?
But they never forgot it, because I wasn't making a sales call. I was just making an observation.
Sure.
Some of your best sales calls are just observations of what's going on in your market, of things you're not doing.
Sure.
Not necessarily that your customers aren't doing, not that your competitors aren't doing. It's very possible that guy could, oh yeah, I know, it's been there 2 months. I know about that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say, well, if it's been there 2 months, why is it still there?
Sure.
I'm certainly not going to say that to the guy.
Right.
But it's nice to be able to say to a company that's not a customer that my sweeper driver was on the parking lot next door and noticed you have 6 parking lot lights out. Did anybody tell you that? No, they didn't. I said, okay, well, I'm just going to let you know you get 6 parking lot lights out. If you want, let me know, and I'll tell you which poles they are. If you want them replaced, let me know. I'll get a crew out there and we'll replace them. And electrical work, roofing work, and air conditioning work was all subcontracted out.
Sure.
We had one contractor for each service. We didn't bounce back and forth. We had one company for each solid service.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to go back to the snail mail, because I got off track there a little bit. How I got my foot in the door was Harold Green, after talking with him after the seminar, invited me down to his office in Hunt Valley, Maryland, and he handed me a stack of postcards that they send out during the year. One was for spring cleanup of like anti-skid. I don't know if anti-skid is big where you are in parking lots. After the winter's over, they put sand or 1Bs or small stuff down.
Yeah.
That's got to get picked up. A pothole one, a leaf cleanup for the fall, line striping one. And all I did was just, if you want to know, for me to find the property manager, again, early on, I have become much more sophisticated now because the internet is much more sophisticated now. But in the past, if you're at a shopping center and you see the Kohl's and the Aspen Dental and this and that, and Julie's cupcake shop, etc. Which store do you go in to find out who owns the shopping center?
Right. That was my question.
It's the smallest one, Julie's cupcake shop.
She knows.
Because if the owner is in there, the owner knows who they're paying the rent to. The manager of any store who's just the manager has no idea what their rent is, who they pay their rent to, who the property manager is, and find the small independent guy, the pizza guy, maybe the insurance agent, depending on what in a shopping center.
The hair cutting matter.
Yeah. The barber, not the holiday hair. The regular thing. There's always permits for the shopping center. Many of the pylon signs at the bottom or on the sign, they say owned and managed by. It tells you who the company is. Oh yeah. Well, here anyway. I mean, I can't speak for
looking, because I have seen little tags on there. So now I want to have to look and see.
Yep.
They usually pop I think.
Yep. Owned and managed by. I know that before Site Centers was DDR, or before Developers Diversified was Site Centers, which they are now. One of our jobs at their shopping centers was to go around to every single front door of every single store and put a little sticker that it was a DDR owned and managed shopping center.
Wow.
That's on the door of it's on the front door of every store. Now, that doesn't give you a contact, but it tells you who they are.
Yeah.
It tells you what company it is. Now, with the internet, I mean, if you Google the name of the shopping center and the words property manager, you're going to get it. It's going to come right to you. Now, how do you get to him? It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to seal coat or talk about seal coating, I don't know how many shopping centers seal coat. My visual remembrance is not many.
No, usually what I do is look to see if it's been seal coated before.
Okay.
So usually if it's been seal coated before, then I know there's a shot. If it has.
Okay. Well, but also look if it needs line striping, because if you're doing seal coating and line striping, even if you don't get the seal coating, maybe you can pick up the line striping.
We do that, yeah. Crack sealing, line striping.
If you do seal coating but you also do crack filling and pothole repair, then if it's not been seal coated before, look for potholes, look for cracks.
Yeah.
Sending the property manager a little educational blurb about the nature of cracks and how they form, and what's next for a crack. The cracks get together, it becomes an alligator area, becomes a pothole, starts pumping mud and water, and now you've got for $1 a linear foot you can crack fill, or for $8.20 a square foot you can fix a pothole.
Save it, yeah.
Your choice. Take a pick.
So when did you look to be about 42 years old, Mike? If I had to make it. Are you starting to slow down? Have you slowed down? Have you retired? Have you not retired? What do you do now in any aspect of life?
Well, in my work life, I sold a company, and with my wife sold a company in 2017. I worked for the people that bought the company until the end of September 2019, which was the 2 years on my contract. I took about 2 months off, and then I started to look and see what sweeping contractors needed assistance. I can't compete with the people that bought my company, nor would I want to. I mean, that doesn't seem right. But there are sweeping companies all over the country.
That could use
Yeah. So I talked to a couple people and did some phone consultations, did some just chatting over the phone, chatting at NPE in early 2019 about my thoughts about doing that. A couple people have said, you got to have me out there. I have 2 clients now that I work with very regularly. It's not, for me, it's not about the money. I mean, honestly, I'm a $35 an hour guy. Yeah. So it's, you can have me for a whole week and it doesn't break the budget.
I like that. I like that aspect, really. So that's
well, good. I'm 63. I feel like I've got 5 more years that I can really contribute to the industry. The downside is it's been now a year since I've been an active contractor. So in the last year, I've been talking to other people about their business. And because it's not happening to me in the industry, it's a lot harder to keep up with what's happening in the industry.
Sure.
because I don't see the phone calls don't come to me every day. The trucks don't break down. The drivers don't quit. Trying to find employees is not my day to day anymore.
Right.
So I'm trying to get the couple people I have, the largest company, I'm trying to get them to work on the business and not in the business.
Sure.
The guy is still very committed to being out every day with the crew, and great thing, but that's as big as a company will ever get until you can let somebody else handle that crew and get yourself on another crew, and then let somebody else handle that crew, and then just keep training and keep moving forward. And that's what I want to do. I think if I talk to sweeping contractors about the options for business that aren't sweeping, the things you can do as a sweeper, the access you have to, the one thing you have as an active sweeper that people like you and everybody else wants is who your customer is. Who are they? How'd you get a hold of them? How do you get more work? That's the one question that's asked more often than any other.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my brain was, in something so niche, how do you get to work? You know what I mean? Is it's just that I understand that client list and your clients in general must be that, they must be under lock and key under your Fort Knox if you can.
No, because they're all out there in the open. If I can find them, so can anybody else.
Yeah.
But the issue is, long ago, I was told and came to believe that customer satisfaction is nothing. Everybody makes a big deal about customer satisfaction. It's not the preeminent thing. Customer loyalty is what you have to strive for. Because I have had several customers in my business life that they were only in my portfolio because at the time I was the lowest bidder.
Sure.
If somebody would come to them in mid-contract and offer to save them $2 a sweep or $120 a month, I was out the door. Yeah. I had a job awarded to me, and I started it. We were maybe 3 or 4 days into it, and the guy called me and said, "Hey, listen, one of the bids came in late, and it's lower than yours, so we're canceling your contract and going with that guy." I'm like, okay, And I will say I'm very proud of myself. I never worked for that company again.
Very good, very good.
Every time they called, I said, "Nope, not interested."
So what else? What else keeps Mike Nawa busy? I know we were talking beforehand. I play guitar and write very poor songs, but I noticed and asked you about playing clawhammer because I know you're a banjo guy.
Yep.
What other hobbies keep Mike busy nowadays?
Well, I collect banjos and some vintage guitars. I have a couple of other vintage instruments that aren't either one of those. I have a ukulele, 1 or 2 mandolins. I'm going to hopefully, when I am done with all of this, 68, 69 on, I'm going to start building banjos. I'm going to build the first few really, really poorly.
Good.
I'll
take one of those ones. I want one of the.
But I want to try it. I've worked with a couple of luthiers, and I have some custom built banjos just for me. I have 2 Clinch River Appalachian Mountain tackhead banjos that the luthier built just for me.
So how often do you play? How often do you play?
Every day, multiple times a day.
Are you in a crew? Are you in a band?
Nope. My son is in a working bluegrass band.
Get out.
Most of my kids have some musical interest or ability. I do not.
Right.
It takes me a tremendous amount of effort and time to learn a song.
Sure.
And to learn it and play it without looking at the music.
Yeah.
And I have to play every day. I play in the morning when I let my dog out. I'll sit on the porch and play for 45 minutes. Have breakfast, play for another 10 minutes, and see who to talk to on the phone, go off to work and get some things done. And when I get home, I play for a little while, and before I go to bed, I play for a little while.
So when you and I first started talking, I guess it was probably been last spring maybe. We were talking about this building.
Yep.
And everything that's in there. I know you were talking to me about it being an incubator and your daughter having a hand in things, and there was a coffee roaster in there as well. Tell us about the building, because if I come see you, I want to see the building. too.
Well, the place is called The Thought Lot.
The thought.
Um, yeah, you can look it up on Facebook. We're there. It was it is a 10,000 square foot former warehouse. It's the last remaining building of the original Beistel Company, which is the people that make those fold open Halloween decorations and wedding bells for
Like
honeycomb things.
they were made out
Yeah,
of
yep,
yeah,
yep.
yeah.
They still make those. They still make those in Shippensburg.
Really?
But they built a new factory outside of town, and the developer bought their former industrial complex, knocked every building down except this one, and started building townhouses. And stopped building townhouses, and the building sat vacant. And a couple of people said, "Hey, we'd like to use that for a little arts, venue." And they moved in, started doing some things. And my daughter had her 16th birthday party there, and she decided to get involved there, and that made me get involved there. And it was a lot of fun. And
what's all in there now? What did you tell me is in there now?
well, there's a wedding planner. Hannah's, my daughter's store, Whiskers Vintage and Vinyl, is in there. There's a music store. There's a coffee roaster. There's a bakery. There's several artist studios and several musician studios.
You told me there's a stage, right? There's
we have a 16 by 20 stage. We have a 28,000 watt Mackie digital sound system,
crazy,
which is way too big for that building.
That's crazy.
It was just, I did that for myself.
Yeah,
of course. And we have our lighting system was designed by a guy with the Kennedy Center Award in theater lighting. So our shows look really good. I sent you some photos of some of the shows. So the lights
they look really good.
Yeah. Really good. Places, we foster. We don't go for the local bands. We are sort of a stopover for regional touring bands. There are bands that we would never have expected to get, but it was a Tuesday, and they were on their way from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia for a Thursday show.
Yeah.
And they stopped in Tuesday and played a show, and it was, it was a pop-up show. We had picked up one of my favorite artists is Billy Liar. He's Scotland's angriest poet. He's a solo acoustic punk artist from Scotland. Yeah. Oh. He was in Florida.
You thought sweeping was niche. That's a really niche. Yeah.
He was flying out of Newark. He was driving up the coast with a friend of his looking for a gig, and a friend of his knows the Thought Lot and said, "Hey, can you give the guy a show?" I said, "Hey, we'll give it a shot." It was Tuesday or Wednesday, I forget the day. And I wasn't into punk music until that show.
Really?
And I said to Brendan Gleason, the guy who brought Billy up to the show, "I want more of this. This venue needs more of that," because that's a very, the listening audience is a very tight, cohesive audience. So for one of the few times we actually filled the building up, because there was a punk show and they all just show up, and it was fantastic. We've had indie rockers. We've had, people that have been, we've had Juno nominated artists, which is the Canadian Grammy. We've had some, bands from Tokyo, Scotland, Sweden.
It's a mixed bag then if you stop there and
it is.
Check stuff
Yep.
out. Where's that at? What town?
Shippensburg, Pennsylvania.
Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. I'm gonna look that up.
Yep.
Mike, to bring it all back around before we shut down for the night. This is I rarely do night podcasts, but it's been a good one because it's been able to let us talk about a lot of different things and no one's in a hurry. If somebody wants to, let's say you didn't know that I kind of know a little bit about this industry, and I said, "Hey, so-and-so told me to call you. I've never done sweeping. I don't know what I'm doing. I just know that there's a need. What do I need to do?" What is that advice? What is some of the first few key points of advice you give somebody who wants to get into this industry?
Well, I've had those calls, and some of the things I want to know before giving advice is, where are you? What town are you in? What part of the state are you in? Mm-hmm. How many shopping centers are there? Are there malls? Are there strip centers? If you look in the phone book, or you look online, or you look around your town, how many sweeping contractors are there right now?
Sure.
There are towns, major metropolitan areas like Philadelphia, can always have another competitor. You know, I mean, there's I don't know, 1,400 shopping centers in the Metro Philadelphia area. There's probably 20 sweeping contractors. One more is not going to make a difference.
Sure.
How do you differentiate yourself from the people that are already going to do it? If you don't know what it takes to run the business, how are you putting a business plan together?
Sure.
Have you watched anybody sweep a parking lot? Have you been, I recommend that they go to NPE. I recommend that they give a call to Ranger at World Sweeping Association or one of the guys from NAPSA and find out more about sweeping from the two trade organizations that serve this industry. And, you know, I want to hear why they think they can do a job in their town. Now, I will say I've talked to some people, one guy in Eastern Kentucky, his only job was sweeping the one mall in town. He had a little T500 from Victory, a little tow behind sweeper, and he just wanted to get better than that. What's the next step?
Yeah.
And, you know, we talked about quality. We talked about what the T500 would do, what the T500 is not going to do, what blowers is he using, you know, and it was a great conversation. Still talk to the guy every now and then, but he was cutting the grass at that shopping center and they asked him to start sweeping, and what's he going to do? He's not going to buy a $130,000 truck for one job.
Right.
And there's not another job to be had. It's a little town with one shopping center.
Wow.
So somebody sold him a T500, which would have been my thought to begin with. It's a simple to operate. It does what you need it to do. And it's one step above pan and broom or billy goat.
Really?
But there's, you know, I want to know what they want to do. I want to know why. And that's a harder sell for me than the guy with 3 sweepers who wants 5 or 6, or wants to take his 3 sweepers and parlay them into line striping and pothole patching and you know, washing windows and cleaning out vacant spaces.
That's an easier transition than going from blank.
It is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's only my opinion because that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went up the truck ladder, more trucks, more shopping centers. And it never really seemed that I made the profit that I thought I was going to make until, again, I hate to beat it up, but it heard that Harold Green thing at the NPE and said, you know, I'm missing all these opportunities. I worked really hard to get these customers. Mm-hmm. Why aren't I striping them? Why aren't I fixing the potholes? Why aren't I, you know, telling them the lot lights are out, the graffiti on the back of the wall, you know, somebody moved out. Yeah. Those are things they want to know because they're not there and I am.
Yeah, so that'd be a good piece of advice for somebody starting out right away, is to do that right away. Just get in there.
I think so. Yeah,
and do it. Mike, any last words? Anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, you driving to Nashville?
I'm probably going to drive. I always drive. So
okay.
Sometimes because I stay longer than I projected, or I arrive earlier than I projected. Last year or the year before, I think it was last year, I stayed 2 days after and went to the Maker's Mark Distillery and all the stuff that I wished I would have did in Kentucky on the way up. I did that. So I really
we are not that far out of your way if you're going to be private.
Most definitely. Michael, thank you very much for getting on the podcast. I really appreciate it. If we have striping questions, I know who I'm going to go to, or sweeping questions, I know who I'm going to go to, or parking lot maintenance or property maintenance questions, I know I'm going to go to. Thank you very much, sir. Best wishes. Everybody stay safe out there, you and your family. Once again, Blacktop Banter, episode 30. We want you to pave it, stripe it, seal it, and sweep it.